So today in Jazz Piano Daily number 112, I'm going to show you how to create your own blues bass line. So now we already learned a blues bass line back in Jazz Piano Daily number 103, 104, 105, but now I'm going to show you how to actually create your own bass line from scratch. All right, so we already did the tritone substitutions, right? So you could take a look at the Jazz Piano Daily. It was number 109, turning altered chords into tritone substitutions, and it said write out your own bass line. Well, here we go. Now I'm going to show you how to write out your own bass line. All right, so let's take a look at this first measure right here. All right. Now, what you notice is we're going from B flat up to E flat. The first thing to understand about a bass line is you're going to hit the root in the left hand, okay? The bass is going to hit the root of the chord on each new chord change. And before I go any further, let me just let you know, take all of these rules with a grain of salt. As you learn more, there's always different ways of approaching this, but right now I'm just trying to make it simple for you so that you have some rules that you can follow, and these rules definitely work. You can change them down the road, but for right now, let's just start with what works. All right, so what works is every time you have a brand new chord, so you see it says B flat and it goes to E flat. When you get to the B flat chord, make sure on beat 1 you're hitting the note B flat. When you get to the E flat chord, make sure on beat 1 you're hitting the note E flat. So that means that you already know that the first note has to be a B flat, and then the first beat of the next measure has to be an E flat. So really, you have how many notes to be able to fill in? 3. Now, why do I say 3? It's quarter notes, right? So I could use quarter notes for my bass line. You might be wondering, though, hey, wait a minute, why can't I use eighth notes and 16th notes and triplets and all of that? You absolutely can. But again, simple rules, right? So the simple rule is, for right now, just start with quarter notes. That's really all that you need. In fact, bass players, jazz bass players, play a lot of quarter notes. Yes, they put eighth notes and triplets in there as well, but there's a lot of quarter notes. So you really want to kind of make sure you get that quarter note bass line down first. So with a quarter note bass line, if you're already hitting on beat 1, well, you got beats 2, 3, and 4, right? So you got 3 more beats to fill in. Now, beat number 4, this is the beat just before you get to the next chord, right? So beat number 4, right here, before we get to this E flat chord, right? So before we get over to E flat, this beat number 4 is typically going to be an approach into the next notes, right? Now the approach is typically going to be a half step, all right? A half step, right? So if we see here, you see how we have, so I see how I have D going up to E flat. Now again, I said typically a half step. Remember, take this all with a grain of salt. It could be a whole step, it could be a leap, and all of that. There's other different things you could do. But if you want a bass line that's going to work to get started, do the half step. All right, so this is a half step from below, moving up to the E flat. So now I have that's beat 1, that's beat 4, and then I'm going to beat 1. So if that's beat 1 and that's beat 4, well, now I have 2 beats to fill in, beats 2 and beats 3. So now what should I fill it in with? Right there, these 2, those 2, or those 2, right? Now, can I go somewhere else? Sure, I could like come down here and then, you know, do something like that, right? But why not, if I'm here, and I'm going there, why not fill in right in that range there? Get a nice walk up. Now, you might think go up the half step. Almost never do you go up the half step like that. Why? Because it really pulls the harmony out. Listen to what happens if I do that. Right, do you hear how it's... Because this creates the flat 9 interval, which is a really strong interval, right? Very strong, okay? So we typically stay away from that half step unless we're going all chromatic. But obviously we can't do that because that would be too many beats in there. All right, so if that leaves that out, then what happens if we go up to our 9th? It sounds really nice there. So what I do is I skip over that half step and I go up a whole step to the 9th of the chord or 2nd of the chord, and I just follow up chromatically until I get to the E flat. Now, the next measure here, I want to get where? I want to get back to this B flat. So now I could go back down to this B flat But this is the other thing about bass lines. We want to have like kind of an arc to it, right? So I don't want to just like kind of go up and down, you know, like do these little waves. I want to kind of go up and down and up and down. I want a nice, you know, melodic motion to my bass line. So what do I decide to do? Let's keep going up. Right? Very common sound. You've heard that sound before. Let's break down what's going on. So we know we have E flat here on beat 1, and we know that we're going to B flat here on beat 1 of the next measure. We also know that this right here is going to be the half step, right? We said we're going to typically do that half step resolution into the note. Half step resolution doesn't always have to be from below. The half step resolution could also be from above. I could have also done this. Something like that, right? Or could have done that. I could even do this. You see that? There's a whole step. Remember how I said it doesn't have to always be a half step? But these rules are kind of good because it's just a nice way of kind of keeping us structured so that we're able to actually, be able to create a bass line on the fly and not get overwhelmed with too many rules. So, just walking right on up. Again, so that's beat 1, that's beat 4. Now I have 2 beats to fill in. Well, why not go here and here, Willie? Well, yeah, sure, you could do that, but by going to that third here in the second beat, it's very strong. Remember, the third really solidifies the sound of the chord. So listen to what happens if I do this. Could I do that? Sure. Doesn't sound bad at all. This, though, I think sounds better. I like going to that third and then adding some chromaticism in there because the chromaticism creates tension that then gets resolved. Remember, music is all about tension and release, tension and release. All right, so from the beginning. Now, another rule of a bass line, you always have to be looking ahead, right? The bass line is always about looking ahead to what is the next chord, the next note that's coming up, right? So if we take a look here, we see that we're coming down to this F. I know it's probably cut off, but anyway, that's an F down there, right? So we're going to hit an F, sorry, that F, right? So we're going to be going to an F. So we're on a B flat, and we're going to get to an F because that's an F minor chord, right? So we have B flat, that's beat 1. We know we're going to go to the F. What are we going to do on beat 4? For right now, just for ease, we're going to do our half step resolution. That's exactly what we did right there. We did a G flat, this time a half step from above. So now we have beat 1, we have beat 4, and then beat 1 of the next measure. So what do we fill it in with? What could we fill it in with? We could do this. 1, 2, 3, 4. Sounds beautiful, right? It's awesome. Sounds so great like that. But that's not what I did, right? I did something a little different. Instead, I did this. Okay. Now, why did I do that? Again, where did I go to? Third of the chord, right? Third of the chord, really solidifying that sound of that B flat dominant, you know, that major third in there. Then I come up and I go up to the 13th of the chord, right? Which might seem a little bit weird, especially if I play the chord, right? But it then resolves down nicely by a half step down into that F. So, the entire bass line. I did not write in the fingering here because you've got to start getting used to creating your own fingering this. I'm going to tell you the fingering right now, and you can go ahead and write it in your sheet music. I'm just doing 5, 4, 3, 1, 3, 1. You could do that, 3, 2, 1, but I would probably go 3, 1. I like kind of hitting 2, then coming down to 5, then 1, 2, and then 1. Okay. There's many different ways in which you can decide to write out your fingering for this. Okay, so you want to play around with it. Now the trick of a bass line is in order to be able to like be able to play that bass line around like that, you have to be very adept at quickly adjusting your fingering on the fly. You don't learn that by reading the fingering and like, oh, it's a 5, it's a 3. No, that's not how you learn that. You learn that by, darn it, you know, like by making the mistakes. That's how you learn it. You got to dive in, you got to make those fingering mistakes, and you got to try and keep working it out. Pick yourself up, try it again. Pick yourself up, try it again. You're going to start to figure out the patterns that work for you and work for your hand size. Remember, my hand size is likely different than your hand size. So the fingering that's going to work for me is not necessarily going to work for you, and the fingering that you can do, I might not be able to do, right? So it gets very much down to the player level. Right? So anyway, here's the first bass line. Work on this. I'll see you tomorrow and we'll finish out some more of the bass line. To get the first 45 pages of music for free, just go back to JazzPianoDaily.com. If you liked the video, please be sure to click the like button and also subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. To watch the rest of the lessons in this series, just click on the playlist to the right of this arrow. Thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next video.